So, hello everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Apologies for the voice. I must have caught a bug somewhere in between my travels back home and here, but we'll pull through and hopefully my voice isn't that terrible. But today I wanted to talk about the symbolism of control, what it leads to through number six, why number six is the number of the beast, the importance of the seventh day, and how the sixth day and control, the image of the tyrant, is connected to scrupulosity, and how it possibly you can see that pattern beginning in the Renaissance era. So, first, obviously, we have to go to Genesis in the days of creation. On the sixth day, the Lord creates man along with most of the creatures that roam the earth. And then on the seventh day, he takes rest. Now, hopefully, uh, most of us know that in Genesis, the creation story isn't the literal interpretation of how the material earth was created, but it's more outlines the structure of what the human soul means and how it functions. Or for more modern terminology, the language of how consciousness works. And so the sixth day uh, is the day of creation or the number of man. And so without the seventh day, it's all about the creation, and it all becomes about the parts of God, you can say, his creation, instead of the image of the whole. It's a reduction of idiosyncrasy, the obsession of idiosyncrasy, to the point of where you miss, once again, the image as a whole. The seventh day is the day of rest, but it is also the necessary function to be able to account for the strange or the fringe. Now, if you think of something like rest, like going to sleep, we can say, it is kind of a mini death we face every day and a small resurrection we face in the morning. Now, if you think about something like death, it is weird, it is strange, it is something that we don't keep on our forefront necessarily every day. And it is, a strange thing that we have to go through. It's the unknown. You have these crazy dreams. You don't necessarily have what thoughts you have or control over your body. It's this complete let go of any sort of control over yourself. And the fact that there is a seventh day means that is necessary for the functioning of a conscious individual being man. And so you can see this pattern also in the Old Testament laws, where the garments, the edge of the garments need to be frayed or fringed. And Christ in the New Testament even tells the apostles not to till the edge of the field in order to make room for the stranger. And that's once again connected to the number seven. If we go now, think about why the number 666 is associated with the evil one himself, or Satan and the demonic. It is because the six keeps repeating itself because it's the absolute control to account for everything, for all of creation. So something like, um, you know, having an identity, like the government gives you an ID with a number, to a certain extent, is the participation with the attempting to account for everything. Now, that isn't always wrong, because obviously, to some extent, we have to try to account for as much as we can. The problem is when we don't allow the unknown to exist, and how that may that look like. So if you imagine, if we wanted to have complete control to prevent death of any sort, uh, there would have to be a tyrannical aspect where they just lock you in a cube for the rest of your life and just feed you when you needed fed, to make sure that you're to some extent safe and you're accounted for, that no strange thing can happen to take away your life. Now, as we all know, that would never last, because anytime there is, even if it's goodwill that doesn't last, and you can say the wild beast comes and doesn't allow for that to happen. Now, another way to think of this is also by the way through your experience and your own perception. If you think about over focusing on something like cleaning your house, and you want to deep clean your house, completely purify it from all filth, you will be cleaning your house probably for the rest of your life, because first off, you'll do the basics, but then as you focus down and magnify into the individual details, you will have to scrub every surface you've never even recognized before, such as maybe the edge of your moldings, and then eventually have to clean behind the refrigerator and behind your stove. And by the time you finish all that, dust will land again and you'll have to do it all over again. Now, to some extent, if you think about that, when Christ says to not till the edge of the field, to leave room for the stranger, in the same manner, he's kind of, to some extent, saying it is okay to not constantly clean behind the stove. That is kind of the unknown, right? And it may sound silly, but once again, think of it more of your perception and like your day-to-day actions. Imagine if uh, you had to truly deep clean your house. Um, you would be doing it once again for a very long time. So that's this aspect of control, but also having to kind of magnify yourself down as almost an observer and seeing the individual details of itself. Another way to think of it is, I'm sure some of you have seen one of those kind of like illusion based videos where there's a bunch of basketball players and they're all wearing black, and they say, find the player wearing the white shirt. Now your brain focuses only to see the color white and misses all the details that are in the black. And sometimes those videos will end saying something like, oh, I'm sure you didn't see the monkey that danced across the field, or something like that. And it's because that aspect of the number six, of the tyrant, of trying to account for everything to the point where you look at its parts. It reduces it to its idiosyncrasies. Um, Once again, it's also the problem we see within the conservative movement with something with the when it comes to the issues of transgenderism, where there's that documentary called "What Is the Woman," and the only way they accounted for when we're able to define woman was based on its parts. So you reduce the woman to its parts, and so the only thing that makes a woman is their sexual organ, and that is it. Now, that is problematic because we don't want to identify something by its parts, but we want to see somebody as an image of the whole, even things that we can't account for. So, through that experience, I hope you can see that pattern between the importance of having the seventh day of rest, which helps us um, kind of lets go of our own mental control over things and able to perceive things in a wider range. Otherwise, you have that phenomenon where it's called tunnel vision, and you can think of tunnel vision as something like the aspect of the sixth day. Now, if you think of a true Satanistic pattern, it is about the individual. So as you can see, it reduces, you can say, full participation down all the way to the individual, where it's comes down to the worship of a part. It leads down from idiosyncrasies. You can think of it as taking the apple, like an apple, and then reducing that apple just down to its atom, right? To the individual atoms that make it up, which prevents it then to being the fullness of its appleness. And so that's the kind of satanic pattern there. Now, how is this connected to something like the Renaissance period? And I'm particularly in this case talking about its art. If you think about ancient Christian art, mostly visible through the East, and medieval art, you can see that even Gothic churches account for everything, even the strange, such as monsters. So you have gargoyles on the outside of the church, out of, you can say, the body of the church itself, because gargoyles to some extent are part of the church as well, but their place is on the outside, right? They're on the fringe, like the edge of the untilled field, you can say. That's where the monsters are. and and then thinking of the icon, something like an icon image, there's enough detail in there which allows you to see the fullness of a person being portrayed, an image, but not enough detail where you get lost in it. Now, the Renaissance era, due to its realism and Baroque style arts, start introducing things like lighting and textures, which sometimes if you allows you to focus in on the individual details of something to the point where you can get a tunnel vision and forget what the image is that you're looking at. You can notice the fabrics on the dress, the lighting on somebody's face causing shadows and things like that. And then you have this romantic kind of portrayal of body postures and things like that, and you see the back of somebody's head. um, and and it's kind of, you can see this repeat of focusing in on the parts, right, like the textures, to make it look real. It's this obsession of control of making it real, right, through the parts and the textures of each thing instead of focusing on the whole, which ironically enough led eventually to the Enlightenment, which became the hyper focus of the material, just like the Renaissance art did, right? It was all about the body. It was the hyper focus. Instead of seeing the fullness of something, you focused in on the delicacies, like the passions, right? And like I said, the textures and the lighting. So what does that lead to? It leads to materialism. It leads to uh, no spirituality or anything exists, because that's the weird, right? That's on the edge. And so only that what we can account for and see is that uh, is that which exists, right? And so that's where you start having the kind of this disenchantment in the world, where you set aside things like dragons, mermaids, sirens, fairies, everything that had to do with the attention of a person, and completely got rid of those, um, which is once again doing through that number of trying to account for everything, for trying to control everything. Um, and so, how is this, any all this stuff have anything to do with scrupulosity? Well, I would gather that it is also about control. It is about the individual accounting for everything upon themselves for their own salvation, to the point if their own works does not fit perfectly to a specific legalistic criteria, then they damn themselves, right? So it's looking at it's having this complete control and facing the details too closely, where you end up, like my cleaning example, eternally cleaning your own soul, where you can't function normally in life. But as we see, once again, with the image of Christ, he invites those on the outside. He does, once again, to use this example repeatedly, tells not to till the edge of the field. He goes out to the woman at the well, which is beyond the walls of the city. She's on the outside, and it constantly is inviting the stranger and integrating it upon himself. Um, but it's not only going after the stranger, right? It's not only hyper focused on the stranger, which is a problem of the left, right? They hyper focus and focus too closely and intently on the marginalized or the minority, where they put it on the altar and then don't account for anything else with the normal. Now, also, we also have to think about, going back to Genesis, that on the outside of the gates is a monster known as the cherubim, the angel, which had four heads and guards the entry to the garden. So that once again shows you the necessity of the monster, of the unknown. It is mystery that draws us closely to wanting to know more about something. And the account for everything reduces us to the idiosyncrasies, to the parts of something, where we forget about the image as a whole. And if to kind of wrap this all up, if you look at somebody like I forget his full name, but that astrologist guy, the Tyson, I think his name is. That's the only thing he does in trying to disprove anything religious is try to reduce something to its parts, right? And so you'll have something like people romanticizing the stars or something like that, and then he'll say something like, oh, they're just balls of gas, right? Like they're just this. It's that language use of it's just this, reducing it to its parts, right? There's like this level of disenchantment that happens in it. But then in a mysterious turn, he'll let us know that we're made from stardust, as if that has some meaning to it, when it, by his definition, it doesn't, because stars are just balls of gas. So if we're, let's say, stars, then we're just that. That meaning doesn't necessarily mean anything. So yeah, once again, hopefully this all makes sense of what I'm trying to get at here between the connection of 6 and the seventh day of rest, how it's part of can lead to this Satanistic pattern, and how scrupulosity is connected to that along with the Renaissance, right? So let's all focus in trying to see images as a whole and not try to account too much for the details of the parts. Now, thank you for listening, and I hope to talk to you guys very soon.
If you enjoyed the content here on my channel, please like and subscribe. And if you would like to learn more, I have a blog on my website where you can learn more about symbolism, as well as short form videos and articles on my Instagram page.